Welcome back. You're watching HFO-TV.
Welcome back to HFO-TV. I'm Greg Frick, partner at HFO Investment Real Estate. Today we have joining us again Troy Doss, Senior Planner with the City of Portland and specifically Central City. And we're going to talk a little bit today, thank you for coming, about the Central City 2035 plan. Maybe you can kind of give an update. We've talked before about this, kind of where it is in the, where we are in the process and kind of look at what's going on moving forward. So then thank you for coming.
Yes.
Maybe give some just general points as to, I know it's been talked about, it's been adopted. Where are we with that in regards to actually becoming policy?
Yeah, so we're adopted. The plan went into effect on July 9th, I believe it was.
Right.
It was adopted late spring, so it's after about literally a 10-year process of putting it together, quadrant plans, concept plans, all of that. So this is the final package, zoning code, comp plan amendments, everything's now adopted and going forward.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's good, it's in full. Now I know we've talked kind of before, people appealing. I mean, how does that process work?
So we do have two different appeals that are going on in the plan. The exact basis of them are not clear to us at this point, and they won't really probably be until the fall. But they've issued a notice of appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals, and so we'll figure that out as time goes on.
And when are they appealing the whole plan, or are they doing sections and saying, I don't like this for this, or I know you don't know the specifics, but in history?
Usually it will be specific elements of the plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. So again, you don't know where those are. Now again, in our audience is more multifamily. Maybe you could kind of talk about some of the highlights for people that aren't familiar as to what kind of the changes are, kind of what are the boundaries of the plan in terms of location, and then what it's doing on the multifamily side.
Sure. Well, so the plan boundary, or what's inside the plan area, on the west side would be South Waterfront to the Pearl, and then extending out to Goose Hollow.
Okay.
So it's downtown, university area, all of that.
Right. So really Central City.
Yes.
Okay.
On the east side of the river, it's Central East Side, which is now becoming kind of a bit of a residential community, as well as an industrial district.
Yes.
And then there's the Lloyd District, and then Lower Albina. So that's really all that there is on the east side. But it's a lot of land. It's almost the same amount of land that's on the west side, honestly.
So how far east is it going? Does it go past the Central East Side? Does it get into, like up Division, or is that considered?
No, it stops about 12th Avenue.
Okay.
And then in the Lloyd, it extends to about where the boundary of the Lloyd District Mall is, around 15th.
15th, so okay. So you are really kind of tied and just really within kind of close proximity to the Lambert River and not going further on either side.
Exactly.
Okay. And then within that, there's different districts. There's Goose Hollow, there's our district, there's the Pearl.
Yes, and we changed some of the district boundaries a little bit. So there was a downtown, it's got the downtown district, which is a CBD, but also used to include areas like South Auditorium. That's now shrunk a little bit, and the university district has grown to take in South Auditorium, for instance.
Got it.
There's now a West End district because there wasn't previously one, so that also took a little bit of land mass away from downtown. The Pearl, which was never actually a district, it was part of the River District, is now a district, and then there's Old Town Chinatown. So we've split some districts into smaller pieces as well.
Now is that to do it so you can do kind of district specific changes with the nuances of?
You want to have an urban design kind of framework for those areas that's going to picking up on the unique aspects or characters of them or conditions in each district. And then there's also a very specific policy framework for each of those areas. What type of community is it? Is it more of an industrial area? Is it more of a residential area? Is it a commercial area?
Like you brought up Central East Side, which used to be very heavy industrial. You're starting to see more residential in that area. How's that?
And how do we deal with that?
Right.
What's the aspect of that? And how's that residential different than it would be, say, in the Pearl or in South Waterfront or the West End?
And from the people in terms of the policy side of this, was this all stake? So it's just really the City of Portland. Is Metro involved in this at all in terms of the land use side, or is it really mandate from Metro is you've got to do something and then City of Portland kind of puts it together?
It's more the mandate. So we're still following the 2040 plan adopted decades ago, but it's not, other than that, there hasn't been any real significant input from Metro on this.
There hasn't, okay. And what are the big changes, highlights in terms of like the multifamily side that you want to kind of touch on with this audience?
Well, the big one's always going to be affordability. So it's the biggest issue everywhere. It's not unique to the Central City, obviously. It's citywide. It's West Coast wide. So, and we're finding a lot of that's really being driven. Initially, there was a concern that we weren't having enough production going on, so there was a supply and demand concern. We don't really feel that's the issue now. We're seeing vacancy rates of somewhere around 10%, I think, in the Central City. It's really cost of construction, land costs, and then expected return on investment that's probably driving the lease rates the most at this point. So we're building our way out of the lack of supply, but there's still that affordability issue, and part of that's just what a living wage is in the city versus what a lease rate is.
Right, and then in terms of the building it out, and like you said, the lease rates, are you guys looking at terms of when you're doing these plans, is it you allocating a certain amount of affordable units need to be there in terms of like giving recommendations on inclusionary zoning in the city? This is what this will fit into this, or is it more just overall zoning and then how the city does specific policies to address those?
Yeah, right now the focus really still is on inclusionary housing in terms of getting at the affordability component of it. If there's a large development agreement going on with Prosper Portland, they may have that as an element of it, but for the most part the zoning doesn't get at it. We used to have a lot of development bonuses that came out of the 88 plan, and a lot of them were just trying to get residential development to happen at all. For instance, in 88, no one wanted to build residential downtown.
Especially downtown, yeah.
Now it's highly desirable. Yeah. So
it's the other way around. We can't get housing built out in the outer areas.
Well, I think it's happening everywhere, but one of the things that we don't have to incent it anymore. So, but we are trying to get a greater stock of affordable housing, especially at the 80% and below MFI, and there's a real interest in the city at 60% MFI and below. So there's various incentives that are put in play, but we didn't really address that beyond what was already in the inclusionary housing package. And City Council and the Housing Bureau are kind of leading that charge right now. We made sure we weren't competing against it with anything we put in play and complementing it. So in some cases, there may be some increased floor area ratios or some increased height, and the ability in which you use floor area is a little bit looser now than it used to be to, in part, incent that kind of development.
Incentivize kind of a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And then with the location of the central city, you're not in a lot of predominantly single-family, neighborhoods in Portland, so you're not probably getting the pushback, kind of the NIMBYism pushback, not the density and things like that. I mean, you get a little bit of it, but not to the extent that we see.
We do when it comes to height. So height's the big one. I wouldn't say it's so much density, but there's a real concern, especially by people who've moved in. They have a nice view.
Right, blocking view corridors.
Not a big fan of another building coming along and blocking their view. But overall, in terms of the density, I think we're seeing a big pushback on that.
Okay. Right? And how do you reconcile a view corridor? I mean, is a plan, or how do you, for the city, how do you look at that and, hey, great, I know you've got a view of a bridge today that was, you blocked somebody else's view 10 years ago. How does that?
We protect public views, not private views.
Okay.
And that's really all we can protect. So we did a pretty exhaustive analysis of the existing views through the central city and view spots within the central city. And actually, more often than not, we ended up raising heights because we found that when those were established in the 80s, they were using a technology that was about like this and some photographs and drawings on top of the photographs. So they didn't have the ability to take GIS and then model exactly what that view would look like. Well, we can do that now. And so we found a number of cases the buildings were actually set artificially too low to protect the height, and we were able to increase the height. So.
Well, that's good. Yeah, that's interesting. And then kind of, and what is there, of these little districts, what district do you see, more, so South Waterfront, where you're going to see a push for more housing? Is it, Central East Side in terms of, what's the neighborhood that's going to look different from a residential side in the next, in the next, 15, 17 years?
The Pearl's pretty much maxed out. There's still development potential there, don't get me wrong, but I think it's not going to change significantly. There's a push to get more market rate type housing in Old Town Chinatown to help offset the amount of affordable housing and social services that are there right now, because it appears to be having an impact potentially on the street level, and with commercial development in the district, or trying to incent more commercial development. So that's one area we'd focus on that. Family housing is a big issue for us, so we'd like to see new housing coming in. Most of the housing being built in Central City is still one-bedroom and studio apartments. Yep. We do find families beginning in the Central City and then quickly exiting it.
Trying to find a place to go.
So we'd like to see.
Not a lot of options.
There isn't, and the Pearl's done a pretty good job of that. South Waterfront's done a fairly good, decent job of creating larger units. We've even seen some in the new development in the Lloyd, but we need to see more, a lot more. In terms of places where you're going to see a big change,
but again, that's a zone. You can put zoning for that, but it's. Again, it's kind of the economics on it. It's.
And that's why we're seeing it in those locations. So there's a reason why we're seeing it in the Pearl, because I think the development community about 10 years ago started noticing that there were families starting to come into that development, and they wanted to stay. And so the market responded to that.
Got it.
We provided incentives at one point in the Pearl for that, and an FAR bonus for that, but that's gone away in favor of affordable housing bonus right now. So everything's
so the
still
bonus is for putting affordable, okay.
pretty focused on that.
Got it.
But other areas we see big change. We're anticipating a lot more housing than Lloyd. We've done some zoning changes there to incent more housing. The River District has a fairly large proposal for redevelopment there of some of the earlier lower density apartment and condos that were there. And then we'll see continued, I think, build out in some of the other areas, Goose Hollow, West End, South Waterfront.
Right. As we talked about, I think Lloyd Center is one spot where you kind of see the changing with the mall kind of changing, and you see the American Assets with their development. I think you're going to see that's going to be one area that's kind of connecting kind of the inner east side to the what you're seeing on Interstate and Williams and Mississippi.
And they're certainly not done yet. We're following what they're looking at. The Central East Side's another unique area where we're continuing to see a lot of housing. When we started the process, really looking at the Central East Side maybe 6 years ago, there was approximately 910 units. A lot of that was pre-existing housing. It had gone way back. There's over 2,000 units either developed or coming online now. So it's a whole new thing for us.
And are you looking at changing the Central East Side in terms of trying to keep that industrial feel and mixing it in with, so that's the little nuances of that?
Yeah, so the housing, I should preface it. So housing in the Central East Side is occurring on areas that have historically been zoned for it. The market wasn't responding to it. That's changed rapidly with the kind of rise of creative office in the Central East Side. Right. It's bringing people who want to be closer to work. So I would say that a lot of the housing we're going to see on the main corridors, MLK Grand, Belmont, Burnside, it's probably going to be workforce housing for the most part, and that's probably not a location where we would really want to incent families with children, because there's not a lot of amenities or assets for them in that district. Because we are still preserving most of it as an industrial sanctuary.
You are, okay.
Yeah. We've broadened what the definition of industry would be to what includes a lot of these tech industries. That
kind of loosen up that requirement for these kind of new jobs that are coming, new companies that are coming in. Yep.
But we did not expand the residential capacity in the Central East Side, with the exception of the area immediately around the OMSI station area. Housing can go in there as a conditional use as long as that new housing doesn't have a detrimental impact on viable industrial land adjacent to it. So you'd have to create the setbacks or design the housing such that you're not creating inherent conflicts between an existing industrial use and a new residential use.
And was the overall push of this plan to try to look at ways to get more housing within the central city, just in terms of trying to meet some of the demand, or is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, we're always looking at trying to improve our employment densities and get employment growth. And then in terms of units, we're looking at virtually almost a doubling of the number of units that are in the central city if we could do that. And there's no reason to expect we won't, based on what we're seeing, yeah.
And then how often do you guys do these plans? I mean, what's the... every 20 years?
They're once in a career type plan, so it's about every 20, 30 years, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And then you do central city, then next time you're going to do outlying areas, or how is it?
And we've done them all recently.
Right.
So a few years back, you may recall, there was a Portland plan that preceded the development of the new comprehensive plan, which was adopted also fully just a few months ago. So there's the layout for the rest of the city, and then we followed suit with our proposals for the central city. So we would hope that there are no large plans like this again anytime in the next decade or two. They take it took a decade to create this one. We hope it rides for another 20, 25 years. Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you for coming and sharing that. Again, you can see this plan is up on our website. I'll put a link on there. If somebody wants to get in and do some reading on that. Always appreciate having Troy come in and kind of give an update of where we are. You guys are, it's a tough job. You guys have to look ahead of where we think the city's going to be and try to plan and zone for that. And
we always make a little bit of changes here and there along the way too. And once a plan's adopted, we don't just put it on a shelf. We will be maintaining it, and give it some care and feeding over the next couple of decades. But we're hoping not to have to do a whole new reset anytime soon.
Right. Was there a big surprise in kind of looking at the data and when you're doing this plan? Was it the immigration coming here was higher than we thought, or was there anything of kind of?
I think that's surprised everybody, honestly. Yeah, I mean, we're on the map now. I don't know if it's Portlandia, if it's our livability, or a combination of things, but we are definitely on the map now. We have a lot of people coming in, and we have a lot of investment coming in as well in terms of business and creative office growth. So we welcome it.
Well, that's what we talked about. Somebody asked me, where are we? And I said, I think the one thing surprising, we knew we were We knew we were hot. I don't think in 2010 we realized how hot and how aggressive we would get the immigration. So as I talk to people about development, you say, yeah, you see a lot of cranes. You know, I think we're the fourth most cranes in the United States per city. But you've got to remember, we had a lot of pent-up demand because there wasn't a lot going on, and I think everybody kind of underestimated the amount of immigration into the city of Portland.
And it's really, I mean, a lot of it was post-recession. There was definitely a lull period, but apartments kept holding up, and then creative office started picking up, and now they're both roaring. So we're starting to see even condo proposals again in Central City, which is
the one thing that's kind of been missing in this whole kind of recovery. We just have
for
not
10
seen-
years.
Yeah.
10 years.
So, which is again putting pressure on the single-family home pricing. We need to see some more of that coming in.
Yeah, we're starting to see a shift in tenure, so that's nice. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming, and we'll see you next time on HFO TV. Hey, thank you.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Build your legacy with HFO. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information.